Good morning, everyone. My name is Jennifer. Thank you so much for joining me at Tiny Barn Farm. Today we're gonna actually do a few things. We're going to pick some garlic scapes that are ready to be harvested. And also we're gonna take Miles for a bit of a walk. Right, Miles? We're gonna go for a walk? Yeah. And then we're gonna tell a bit of a story of the tiny barn, that little building there. That was the only structure that was on this property when we purchased it a few years ago. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about that building and how we lived in there for 5 months while we were building our home here. So yeah, it's kind of an interesting story. We learned a lot about ourselves living in there and just becoming a part of the community, and a lot of curiosity about it because it was originally a kind of a drive shed slash little kind of storage area. And I'll show you kind of what it looked like when we first opened it up after it had been closed for probably about 40 years. Yeah, I'll tell you a little bit about our experience in that space. Let's go to the garden and see how the garlic scapes are doing. We've had beautiful rain over the last couple of days, and now this gorgeous sunny day, things are just taking off in the garden, which is just so lovely. Once again, we've got our volunteer sunflower here that is growing rapidly. Miles, please don't pee on the sunflower. Garlic scapes are ready to be picked. They're starting to flower, or they're getting ready to flower. That little kind of bulb on the end is the garlic flower. That's an onion flower. So beautiful. Very similar to the garlic flower. So those garlic scapes would turn into something that kind of looks like this. Isn't that so pretty? Yeah, that just came up this year. That was from an onion from last year because this is the newer onions. But man, nature is just amazing. Look at these. Aren't these amazing? So I cut them on an angle so that they, the water when it rains, it doesn't sit on the stalk on the garlic. But now that I've cut these, that means we're going to get larger garlic bulbs because the energy of the plant will go back into the root rather than putting it into the flower. So hopefully we'll get some nice sized garlic bulbs. Those should come around probably in August. They'll be ready. Yeah, lovely. Here we are. Look at that. Look at that. That's a nice amount. I didn't think we'd get this much. So I'm just going to kind of shove these in a bag for now and put them in the fridge, but we will be eating these over the next week. But oh, just one of the best smells. Yeah, it's always exciting. Garlic scapes is kind of the kickoff to summer, kickoff to harvesting. So yeah, we'll be enjoying these over the next week or so. We mowed this path with our riding mower so that we could keep all the fields wild, but we mow a walking path. Wild strawberries are in bloom. Oh, here's some. We saw a bear the other day. I wish we had caught it on video, but these are almost done. This one will be good. We saw a bear sitting out here eating strawberries. It was almost too far to catch it on video, but man, it was just amazing. There they are. Look at these. These are actually pretty decent size. They're almost the size of raspberries.
Yeah, it's more raspberries.
Yeah. And there's just a huge field of them. I mean, they're a little bit in the tall grass, but wow. I don't know if you've ever tried a wild strawberry. They're just, the flavor is like so intense and compared to, I guess, strawberries that you grow. Oh, Miles is about to roll around in strawberries. There you go. Miles, you're gonna smell like strawberries, buddy. You don't care. Yeah, there you go. Strawberry dog. Yeah. Miles, come on, come on. This is an old foundation. You can't see much of it now because it's grown in, but that's part of an old basement. This was an old wooden farmhouse at one point. I think it was taken down in the 70s. Tiny barn would have been kind of the storage shed for that house. And it was the only building left standing. We are inside the tiny barn. We haven't been in here for probably about a year and a half. I mean, we check on it just to make sure nobody's moved in or any critters have moved in. But if anybody lives on a farm, they quickly realize the infestation of flies that you can get against windows. So we have a bit of a excess of flies on the table. But I'll give you a quick tour of just kind of what the building is like right now. We're not finished. So when we were living in here, it was an unfinished building. I mean, it kind of progressed over time and we got it to a certain point so that it was sealed and we weren't getting attacked by mosquitoes. But essentially there's still some work that needs to get done to complete it and make it more hospitable for guests. So we want to turn this into a guest house. So, but I'll go through it with you and we'll have a bit of a tour of what we're looking at as it stands. And Miles is with me here, so you'll hear him in the background. Where's Miles? Hi, buddy. Yeah, he wanted to come and see what was happening. So yeah, let's take a look around and see what we got here. So as we enter, we have a very filthy window, but with a lovely view. When we first moved in here, that screen door wasn't here, and we very quickly built it so that we wouldn't get attacked by mosquitoes. They were pretty bad that year. And that's the outhouse way over there. So yeah, a bit of a trek. We used the old barn board from the exterior of the building to finish the interior. And we also used old nails as our coat hangers. So those are handmade old nails. The door we purchased off someone for like $20, and we thought it had a nice aesthetic to it. So we put that in here. It didn't have much of a door before. It had a door, but it was like pretty rough. And here's the old kitchen. We just bought this old kitchen off somebody who was selling it for like $200. Really nice. I mean, you know, it's rustic, but it's on rollers. It's got a pretty good setup. It was pretty clean. So we just thought, you know what, it's perfect. We probably will repaint it just to freshen it up. This countertop is actually old original 2x4s. So 2x4s actually used to be 2 inches by 4 inches. So these were part of the interior of this barn. Because there were some animal pens in here, and then they just had some structural things with some wood, and we thought, you know what, let's just reuse them and make a rustic countertop. And we just love the look of it. It still needs to be varnished, and we will do that with a food grade varnish. But yeah, we were really happy with the way that turned out. And then of course the old tin roofing. We ended up redoing the roof on the barn. It was pretty rough, but we kept all the tin roofing to do the backdrop in the kitchen area. We just thought, you know what, let's bring some of the exterior of the barn into the barn. And of course we still need to complete the trim. We bought these cute little tiny windows. And you can see the house from here. That was a little table that we brought from our old house. It was one of the first pieces of furniture we bought when we left the city at an auction, and we just kept it. And the top of it, once I clean it up and get all the dead flies off it, is completely covered in scratches. And those scratches are from Miles when he was a puppy. Yeah, Miles was the most insane dog we've ever known in our lives. And he used to, when we were off at work, he would sneak up onto the table from this bench and he would jump up onto the table because there was a window similar to this one in our old house. And as soon as he'd see somebody walking by, he'd start freaking out and he would leave all these scratch marks all over. So the entire top of the table is completely covered in scratch marks. And it was kind of funny because you'd pull up in the driveway and you'd see the dog, this large German Shepherd mix, sitting on the kitchen table. My mother was absolutely horrified by this, by the way. But we decided to keep it this way because, you know, Miles is over 15 now, and one day he will no longer be with us. So this will always be a memory of him. We also planted that maple tree outside. We wanted a bit of a shade tree here because there aren't any trees around this building. And it looks like it's doing quite well. I used to get all of our dishwater. So our dishwater would drain into a large 5-gallon bucket when we would do dishes in here. And we would just take it outside and water that tree. And now look at it. It used to be this tiny little sapling, and now it's growing into this magnificent, majestic maple tree. This floor is ash, an antique ash. So we bought this off a lovely woman out in the Parry Sound area. She was taking apart the floor in one of the rooms in her old house. So we just repurposed the boards. Aren't they just beautiful? Yeah. So we'd like to find something similar to that for this floor, which is still plywood. This building is in 2 parts. There's an older part, which is at the back here. This is the original building, the first building. So it's 2 halves. And look at the ceiling on this. We kept the ceiling completely original. There's the old boards. We just loved that look. So we kept that as part of the history of this. And then at some point, the owner built a new section to this barn. So it steps down a little bit. So the old section was animal pens. And I don't know what they kept in here. They might have kept, you know, baby animals or pigs, or I have no idea, but there were there was a floor and some animal pens, and then this new section was added on, and this was a drive shed. And so those front doors at one point were 2 large doors, and this is where I guess where he would keep his tractor or equipment. It was pretty rough when we opened it up. There was a lot of stuff in here, just garbage and things like that. And it was amazing, but we somehow saw the potential. And the ceiling in here is actually the boards that used to clad the exterior of the building. And so what we did, we thought, oh my God, this is so beautiful, that we decided to use the boards from the outside of the building on the inside and create this pattern on the ceiling, kind of in a tiling style. But look at the colors, like the grays and the goldens and the rust. It's just beautiful. You just can't fake this. It's created by the sun and the weather and the many, many years it's been sitting in the elements. And now it'll look like this forever in here because it doesn't have the weather touching it anymore, but it's so beautiful. So we decided to bring that inside the building and to also just leave the beams, the 2x4 beams there as well. I actually like to perhaps put a wood stove in here because it would be really nice to have the option to stay here in the winter. The winters here are just breathtaking. So we're hoping to put a wood stove in that corner and then use some of the old metal siding, which we still have outside, and create a backdrop for that so it'll be safe. So yeah, so that's a tiny barn. We will probably be renovating it at some point once I'm thinking in a year from now, probably, considering all the projects we have. I think a year would probably be the most realistic in terms of timing. But I think for now, I'm going to give this place a bit of a sweep. I'm going to wash these windows, or at least give them a bit of a clean up because they're kind of gross. And then I will open that front window up and show you what it looks like with that view. It really changes this space. Quite a bit of pet hair. Gross. The birds actually use it. Even up until today, I'll see birds collecting pet hair, like Miles's hair, for their nests. Pretty neat. I guess they're fluffing them up. It's amazing. Probably made of oak, I imagine. Warm out today. Okay. Make this place feel a little more homey. Usually I take the stems, the leaves off the bottoms, but today it's just for the barn. We can be a little more rustic. There we are. How lovely. Isn't that pretty? A little bit of sunshine in here. I guess I matched the flowers. I didn't realize I was wearing my daisy t-shirt today. Anyway, these are just one of my favorite flowers. They remind me of my grandmother. She loved daisies. She died when I was pretty young, but I do remember her love for these. Anyway, I wanted to talk to you a little bit about our experience in this place. When we first bought our property, we discovered the tiny barn. We didn't even know this building was here. On the ad of the listing, it had no mention of any building, because technically it doesn't exist. Like, it's not on record, or it's not on any of the on title or anything like that. It was basically just what would have been regarded as a tear down building. It was in pretty bad shape. It was kind of this leaning old shed that everyone kind of thought, well, you know what, at some point somebody's just going to buy this place and just take it down. So the reason I named it the tiny barn is because when we came to see the property, I kind of always had this idea that if we ever bought land, it would probably have a barn on it. The barns tend to last, for some reason, longer than the houses. And then when we pulled up with our realtor, I looked and I saw this building and I'm like, oh my God, there's a tiny barn on the property. And so it just kind of stuck. And I thought, well, you know, this building is really a piece of the history of this place. And we thought, you know what, we're going to keep it in some way. We're either going to keep it as a ruin and let it kind of do its thing over time. But then on closer examination, even though it was surprisingly rough on the inside, it had a lot of garbage in it, and it was, you know, very, very weathered. We saw the potential of this place. We just said, you know what, let's just use this time to fix it up and to make it habitable so that we could at least camp in here, and then, you know, perhaps we could use it down the line as a guest house or something. So we did. We got to work. We just basically tore off some of the outside. My husband is a carpenter, so it really came in handy that he has skills. He looked at it and he said, this is totally fixable. This building has been here for probably 100 years. It's actually has really strong bones, believe it or not. It was literally just sitting on the ground. It's like, so there was no foundation or anything like that. And so we replaced the boards along the bottom with pressure treated lumber, and we essentially renovated the tiny barn into more of a cabin. So we really wanted to keep the aesthetics of the exterior. So almost at a glance, any of the neighbors, the people that have been here for generations, could drive by and essentially glance at it. And you could, if you blur your eyes, it kind of looks like the same building. So we wanted to keep that old world feel, the weathered boards, the barn doors on the front. We just wanted it to be really this old building. It just looks like an old building. So what we did is we reused majority of the lumber on the building. We just repurposed it. So some of it went to the exterior of the buildings. And then on the front of the building where the two big doors were to, as the drive shed, it used to be an old drive shed in the front portion of the building, we made it into a very large window instead of doors. So we purchased our large window from actually a gentleman that was just selling it from his old house in town. We brought it here and it was just perfect for the front of the barn. It's about 5 feet by 5 feet, so perfectly square. So then we complemented that with some smaller square windows, casement windows that could open for airflow. But the picture window was really key to establish that just spectacular view out the end of the barn. Because, you know, this barn has been sitting here for 100 years and it never had a view. I mean, I guess the tractor had a view, but so we really wanted to be able to enjoy that. We had some cozy nights in here listening to the crickets and the frogs at night, and also the fireflies. Like we just had so many amazing, beautiful surprises in being so close to nature here. One night I was brushing my teeth and I heard this swooshing outside and I was like, what is that? And we pointed our flashlight out this window and there was a bear walking by the barn in the tall grass. And it was just like, oh my God, there's a bear out there. It was incredible. And he was just going by. Like he wasn't attracted to anything. Like we were really careful with our food and we had a little barbecue. We were really careful about not attracting animals. And he was just cruising by, just walking through the fields right beside the barn. It was incredible. And it's like, I wasn't even scared. I mean, obviously I wasn't going to go outside. Like I probably had to just not go pee for a while, but seeing such a large animal just outside the window and being able to hear it was just so magical. And so yeah, living here just kind of changed our perspective on a lot of things. I think the one thing that we really realized and learned about ourselves was how little we need to just feel so content and be really comfortable. Mind you, we were here in the spring and summer. So, it's a lot more comfortable when the weather's fine, but we had a heat wave, we had torrential rains, we had a tornado warning once. There's no basement on this barn. So we were sitting in here going, okay, well, I guess if a tornado hits, we're just going to see what happens. I mean, we had wonderful neighbors that offered for us to go to their place, if things got a little hairy. Luckily, nothing substantial happened, but it was pretty scary when the sky starts to turn purple and you're just a little bit nervous about what could happen. But, you know, so the weather was always a factor. We also cooked on a Coleman stove, so that was outside. We didn't cook inside here. They actually recommend that you don't use Coleman stoves inside. So we did have a little table set up outside. And at one point we had a kind of one of those canopy gazebo things, but with the high winds here, it just didn't last very long. But you know, when you woke up in the morning and it was pouring rain, you still had to go out and boil water for the coffee. So yeah, there were some challenges there, but all in all, at the end of the day, I would do it again in a heartbeat. It was just one of those memories that we will always smile about, and it was way more enjoyable than challenging. And I think part of the magic of it is because it was challenging, it was enjoyable. Because we had to go and fetch water and bring it in buckets and bottles, and because we had to light the Coleman stove every morning, because we had to wash the dishes in a big bowl and then dump it you know, under the maple tree outside, and we had the long walk to the outhouse. We showered outside, like luckily it's very private on this side of the building, and we showered out there. At first it was behind like some debris that we had stored outside. We kind of had these old doors, so we kind of made this little makeshift corner where you could be completely private, and we just used watering cans. You know, we just kind of poured them over each other. But, you know, it brought us really close together, and it's just the two of us. So it's a little, I mean, it was the two of us, our dog and our cat. So the four of us, I guess. And, yeah, we just loved it. We just loved it. And I think, you know, if anybody out there is kind of hoping to do something like this or to just have an experience, I would recommend try to find a cabin or rent a cabin or go camping for more than a weekend. I just feel like it's almost like your rhythm, your biological rhythm starts to merge with nature. Like, I know how they talk about circadian rhythms, but it's like you start to sleep better and you're breathing better and you're calmer, and it has this amazing ability to just bring you inner peace. And I think the quietness and the lack of distractions, there was no internet here. So if we needed to go online or pay bills, which we do, a lot of our finances or whatever, our communications through our cell phones, but the service here is very limited and there is no internet. So we had to go elsewhere. We had to go into town. This was prior to us getting Starlink. We were on the long waiting list for Starlink, and I don't even think we would have been able to run it with our little miniature solar system here. So we had no internet, and it really felt very freeing, and we just had a lot of time to just sit and contemplate. This was prior to the beginning of our build. This was in the planning stages. We were just starting to gather information, starting to talk to suppliers and starting to gather that. So we had that to kind of preoccupy ourselves. But in the evenings when the sun was starting to go down and we could watch the sunset and we could hear the frogs in the wetlands, and that really just quieted our minds, and we were able to just have lovely conversations or just sit quietly, watch thunderstorms roll in. We noticed the clouds, we noticed the stars. You just notice things. We noticed the change in even the insects, like how in June the field was just covered in fireflies at night, and I hadn't seen that since I was a kid. I remember fireflies, but it's almost like so many years passed, I never saw them, and then all of a sudden I was reminded, like, oh yeah, these amazing creatures were everywhere. And sometimes we would have the large front window shutters closed and a firefly would sneak in, and it was almost like we had this little light inside the tiny barn when we were in bed. And this little firefly would be lighting up the room. It was magic. What exists without us noticing it just going through our busy lives? So yeah, I think the first thing we realize is how little we need. We were down to the bare minimum. We made the decision when we sold our house and we're going to pursue a build that we would just sell everything, most things. So we kept the essentials. So it was almost like a movement to minimalism, but more like essentialism. Like, what do we actually need? 2 pots, 2 plates, 4 forks. Like, it really came down to just getting rid of everything. I figured once you get into a new place, you're just gonna probably start again anyway. And I really wanted to be traveling light because I wasn't really sure where we were gonna stay in the meantime. So I'm glad we did that because it made the move into this space really easy. We just got it. We had purchased an old cabinet to kind of store our food just in case we had a mouse problem, and all those things that you think about. We tried to mouse proof as much as possible. We also had a cat who was the most spectacular huntress ever. So we never had a mouse issue in here. She would know like days in advance if there was a mouse anywhere near here, and she would kill them and eat them. Like, it was amazing. So having a cat was really, really handy. And insects, I mean, we just had to deal with it. There were times when we had mosquito season. It comes in June, black fly season. It wasn't too bad with black flies here. So anyone who doesn't know where black flies are, they're these little tiny black flies that bite you, and it's just very annoying because there's lots of them. Mosquitoes are a thing, and I think they're probably all over the planet. There were a couple nights where, when the building wasn't quite sealed, we actually put a tent on top of our bed and slept in the tent with the dog and the cat. It was quite the experience, but it saved us from having to deal with mosquitoes. So that was some of the solutions that we had to come up with just to not go mad with the insect pressure. So one year we stayed here for 5 weeks, and then the year after, while we were building our house, we actually lived in here for 5 months. So the 5-month portion of our stay, there was there was some kind of strange overpopulation of grasshoppers. So I'm not sure what that was about, but somehow there were a lot of grasshoppers everywhere. And every time we'd walk to the outhouse, you would just have grasshoppers like hitting you in the face. Like, it was it was so bizarre and so strange, but we just kind of went with it. It was like, oh well, this is what nature is doing now. And we didn't have that. We haven't had that since. But yeah, you just never know what nature's going to throw at you. We also did have a skunk incident. Of course, everyone needs to be initiated into the wilderness by having their dog sprayed by a skunk right before they go to bed, as they're living rustically in a barn. So yes, we did have our dog Miles was sprayed by a skunk, which was, wow. If any of you have been up close to a skunk spray, it's the most shocking smell you'll ever smell. Like, it was amazingly strong, and it just stuck on us for weeks. So thankfully we were out here in a large field and we didn't have a lot of social engagements. Anyway, so we had that experience. So there was a lot of things that a lot of adventures, a lot of just getting used to those daily chores. But yeah, definitely worth it. Highly recommended to anybody who wants to just experience a little bit of that. It brings you down to earth. It teaches you the simplicity, and it puts space between things that just gives you time to contemplate things and to maybe have some different perspectives on life as a whole. And we've carried those lessons with us forward into our home. We still remain with just the essentials as much as possible. We don't shop. We like to just keep things very clutter-free in our life. And yeah, so when we work on this place to bring it back or bring it to a homely space. Once again, we want to be able to share it with people and have someone be able to have people be able to experience what we experienced here. So anyway, I know that I'm kind of blathering on about this, but I was just hoping to share that with you. And I guess thank you so much for watching this. And I just hope that all of you out there have a little place in your life, even if it's just a room or a view or a park or something nearby, where you can really find that space between things to have an opportunity to contemplate things. Because I just feel like we all need a little bit of that in our lives, some quiet and some peace and calm. So thank you for watching. I will see you next time here at Tiny Barn Farm.